Welcome to the Empowered Mind podcast with Joelle and Natalie Rivera. We are on a never-ending quest to master the power of our mind, develop a growth mindset, and explore the leading edge of positive psychology and human potential so we can take radical personal responsibility for creating our destinies and reaching our potential.
So let me ask you, have you ever been in that situation where you're really ready for change, where you feel the momentum coming, you're excited about it, and you're ready to take on the world, and you feel like this is it? Right now, it's going to happen. And then something happens where you step back and stop pushing the momentum and start working on that momentum and backtrack to your current reality.
And so if you've ever had this happen, we have a name for this. We call it the change cycle. And it's basically the thing that gets in the way of creating change. And what causes this problem is fear of change. And so fear of change is like almost as universal as being human. So it's not that you're abnormal if this happened to you. So let me explain real quick how it happens. There was one point in my life where I realized this pattern in myself, and I then looked around and realized I saw it everywhere around me. And I've found since then, there's a lot of research that shows that this is actually how it works. So first, you're discontent, you're frustrated, you know that you don't like the situation, you want to change it. And that discontent continues to build until you reach some sort of a breaking point where you just can't take it anymore. And in that moment, you make a decision. And the decision is, I'm going to change this, that, or the other thing. But then as soon as you make that decision, and a lot of times, as soon as you start taking the steps, what's the next thing that happens? Your fear pops up in your face. And so it's like, oh crap, now you start looking at all the things that are going to happen if you're going to follow through on making this change, and it scares the heck out of you. And so what happens is, as a coping strategy, you develop amnesia of what was so bad about that thing in the first place. So you no longer remember why you wanted to change. It's like your brain just blocks it out. And then you end up backtracking and going back into your life and pretending that everything is fine, because the fear of making the change is worse in that moment than the fear of staying the same.
So even if we want it, even if it's a change that we really desire, that we know that would change and transform our lives for the better, you see, what happens is that we don't do it and we don't follow through because there's certainty in our pain. There's certainty in uncomfortable living. There's certainty in the drama in our lives. And there's certainty in things that we don't want because we already know what that looks like. We already know what to expect. But what happens if you no longer have that drama in your life, that relationship, that job? What happens then? We don't know. There's an unknown factor there. So for example, you might have a job that you hate. And I deal with this with a lot of people that say, I hate my job. And they act like they don't have an option or choice to change it. So some of them get so excited. They get so fed up. They said, now this is it. I'm going to change my job. So they'll work on their resume. They'll make it look all pretty. They take all the steps. They, build a thing in a website where they can put that resume in. They even might upload their resume. And they look for the jobs that they might like, but they never actually do it. They never actually send their resume. And if they send it, they might not even follow up with the company that they send it, that they're so excited about possibly working for them. Why? Because it makes them question, what happens if I do get it? How will my life change? What if I make more money? How does that change? Maybe I have to work more hours. Maybe I have to travel. Maybe I like it so much and I don't know, maybe something goes wrong with it. Maybe my boss will be even worse. So we start making all these questions to ourselves to limit ourselves because we fear the unknown.
And so that's where the amnesia comes in. All of a sudden, you're just forgetting why the job was so bad in the first place, right? And so another really common place to see this is in relationships. And so whether you've had this experience or you have that friend that's constantly having this experience, which is something that's happened to me, where it's like they get so fed up with their partner and they just are ready to make the split and they don't want to deal with this ever again. And they come to you and they're complaining about the relationship and they make the decision they're going to leave. But then like the next time you see them, they're like talking like nothing happens. Everything's hunky dory and they never left. And so why is it that happens? It's because once you get to that point where you actually make the decision to change, that's when the fear kicks in. That's all the things that Joelle was talking about when you're starting to look at what's it actually going to take. And so the anxiety of making the change is worse than the anxiety of keeping the thing, even if the thing is horrible. And so ultimately, there's only two ways out of this situation. Either you're going to keep reaching that breaking point over and over and over again, and each time it happens, it's going to be more extreme, more painful, until one day that deeper part of yourself that really wants you to change is going to cause something to happen in your life that's so extreme that you're going to have no choice but to change. And you're going to have to change kicking and screaming if you have to, but life is going to force it to happen if you don't deal with it.
And you're going to say, nope, no more. I'm not going to do it. And it could be, that your stress is so accumulating in your body that you start developing health issues. It might be that you start feeling anxious around the situation. It might be that you do something irrational and end up getting fired, for example. Or it might be many different things, even in a relationship. You might be unfaithful or whatever it may be, because you're trying to create a situation that's so bad that you want to burn the bridges and push them out of the way, or push yourself out of the way, where you have no other choice but to take that leap. But you got to remember that you always have a choice, and that getting used to living in uncertainty can be very powerful. Taking the next step and realizing that why you're taking that step, because you're always going to feel fear no matter what. But why wait till you're at that point where you're to the breaking point to actually create change?
And so I said that there were two different ways that you can get out of it. One is it's going to happen to you and it's going to be bad. So you don't want to wait for that. And the second option is self-honesty and willingness to embrace the discomfort, which is what Joelle's saying. And so it's really about making the decision. Are you going to allow this thing that you know deep down needs to change to continue to beat you up over and over again? Or are you going to make a decision to change it and not allow yourself to get stuck in that amnesia and backtrack again? Because you've learned the lesson enough times and you can now recognize the pattern that when you feel that fear, don't allow it to go to the next step where you're just going to bail out on your plan. This time, you can do it differently.
And I'll give you a quick example of some of the things that I've done in my life. I had to make a change, and I knew that I wanted to make that change, but I kept backtracking. So one of the things that I did was that I recorded myself when I was to that breaking point, recorded myself, telling myself why I needed to make that change, why it was no longer a non-negotiable, why it was destroying my life and my possible future and my dreams that I wanted to create, that I needed to make a change. So what I did was that I recorded myself on my phone. So every time I needed that pep talk and reminder, I would listen to myself, telling myself why I committed to make this change. Whenever I felt that fear and I felt myself backtracking, I would listen to it. And it would set me back in that place. It was like, no, Joelle, you need to do this. You need to follow through. Some of the other things is that I would write something and put it on my mirror, or do other things as a reminder to myself of why I needed to commit to this. So that no matter how bad my maybe anxiety or fear of this change was, I recognize why it would be beneficial for me to embrace the unknown. And I would tell you, the more you get used to dealing with change, the easier it becomes to create change in your life.
And so what I love about those activities is that you're no longer leaving it to chance. You're no longer allowing yourself to forget why you want to change. So, in that moment when it's so clear why you want to change, that's when you record it. That's when you write it down so that you can never forget. You don't let yourself off the hook. You keep it in front of your face and in your ear as long as it takes until you actually are finished following through. And of course, the other way to make a change when you know that you are likely to backtrack is to just freaking do it and do it as quickly as possible. And I've done this multiple times. I've moved, 2,000 miles away. I've quit jobs. I've closed businesses. I've left huge things in my life. And the way that I was able to do it is when I was in that place of clarity and I knew for sure. I didn't give myself a long period of time to implement the change. I did it as quickly as possible before that pattern of fear and amnesia and backtracking snuck up behind me and kept me stuck again. And so when you find yourself at that breaking point, when you know there's something that you want to change and you don't want to wait for something horrible to happen that forces you to do it, remember you have another option: to be honest with yourself about what it is you really want in your life and to take the steps to make sure you never, ever forget again.
So the question is, are you going to keep letting fear hold you back from your dreams, from your desire, from your ideal life. Because we will tell you that you deserve it to live the life of your dreams and that you can have the life of your dreams. If you're willing to just go through that fear of change, embrace that fear of change, and recognize that it's normal, but at the end of the day, you're going to have the life that you've always desired. Thank you.
Thank you, fellow Freedom Junkies, for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And if you want to help us grow, please rate and share this podcast. You can also become a member of Freedom Nation. Visit freedomorbustpodcast.com and sign up to receive access to exclusive content and take the 21-day happiness challenge. As you know, we believe that entrepreneurship is the ultimate form of empowerment, which is why we created the Side Hustle Business Startup course for anyone looking to create their own income and take back their power. We offer an exclusive discount for our podcast listeners. Find out more at freedomorbustpodcast.com.